our next session will actually explore the cutting-edge stack that actually underpins Revolut, which is a pioneer in global finance. So this is where we will learn how the fintech landscape is changing as a result of cutting-edge technologies. That's going to be the focus for our next session. To spearhead the session, I'd like to please invite on stage Yashraj Erande, Managing Director and Partner at BCG. And he will be in conversation with our very revered speaker. We have with us Vladyslav Yatsenko, co-founder and CTO at Revolut. Can we have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Let's bring that attention back in the air.
Good afternoon, everyone. Vlad, I have realized that it's very hard to stand between people and their lunch. But it seems today we are in that unenviable position. But if all of you are intrigued by 3 numbers, what does it take to create a company that has north of $30 billion in valuation, north of 30 million customers, and north of 30 countries in which they are present, and do all of that in a short period of 8 odd years, then this is really the panel where we can dig deep into the minds of Vlad and understand what the journey has been like. Vlad, as we discussed earlier as well, we are going to keep this discussion focused on 3 critical areas, but we will try and peel the layers and get a bit deeper. So we are going to go through 3 conversations. There's going to be the first conversation on what does it take to build a great product? What does it take to build a great multinational company? And then we are going to get you to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing in terms of the trends that you're seeing. You do get around a lot in the world, so we hope to pick your brains on that. So before we dive into these 3 areas, Vlad, can I request you to introduce yourself and Revolut a little bit? I'm sure your Revolut is not known to this crowd. This is a fintech crowd, but maybe you can add a little bit more nuance to what Revolut is all about.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me at this event. It's my first time in India. I'm super excited to be here. And maybe just before I maybe say anything about Revolut, if I do audience check, can I ask you maybe raise your hand if you heard of Revolut before the previous session? Okay, it's decent. It's not the full audience, but it's decent. Part of it, I guess, is we haven't launched in India yet, but we are on the way there. About Revolut, just in a nutshell, we are a fintech headquartered in London with presence across pretty much the whole Europe, US, Japan, Australia, a couple of other countries, Brazil recently, and our main product in Europe is banking. We started from the roots of FX and cross-border payments and travel card. That was kind of our initial product, and then kind of over time we scaled into offering more services from trading, credit, and so on, and different varieties of those.
Fantastic. It was intriguing to see that there were quite a few hands up there, but there were also quite a few hands which were not up there. So hopefully through this session we can really excite the Indian ecosystem about the business and the product that you have built. Vlad, that brings me to the first step of starting a company. Before an entity becomes a company, you have to have a world-class product with a great product market fit, which consumers want to really use. And I must say that what you have built is truly remarkable. I think I admire it from outside as a great accomplishment for Revolut. But could I pick your brain on how did you go about building a really fantastic product? What were some really difficult choices you made? How did they play out? And what has been your experience like in doing that?
Sure. Maybe I'll start with a disclaimer. Product market fit is not a solved problem for me. It's not like you solve it once and you forget of it. It's something that we have to rediscover all the time. As we grow as a company, we go into new segments of customers, we introduce new products. We have, I'll give you an example maybe. We started with a kind of more or less simple proposition that was solving specific problems around sending money abroad, exchanging, and spending abroad. So 3 simple problems. We gave multi-currency accounts with multi-currency card, right, and enabled remittance. Then, as we started building more product, etc., so we had to reinstate how we package all of that in one application. At some point, recently, we started calling, I guess some of it is the trend of having a super app with a lot of functionality. Some of it wasn't even finance related. There's a lot of affiliated products. Like in Europe, we offer things like hotel bookings, which are right in the app, different type of insurances and so on. At some point, so there is this, when you have all these things together, it's super critical to contain that complexity. Right? For us, it's like one of the principles how we build everything is we have to ensure it's simple from 2 aspects. From the customer perspective, how customer users, can they discover the product? And from internal perspective, how do we manage to deliver that product? Is it efficient? Are the processes behind coping with the growth of customers? The complexity that comes in our case also with operating with many jurisdictions is the regulatory environment, which is fortunately or unfortunately is different across the world, and we have to adjust to that, right? And this is another piece that makes it this problem complex. That's why maybe it's not that many plays in this space, but at the same time, for us it's a challenge to ensure that for customers, it's that experience is not like the friction that is caused by necessary friction related to, again, compliance, financial crime controls, those things that are minimized to such level that customers don't feel it. It's a continuous challenge, but as I said, for us, it's key thing is to keep things simple, and it goes through the whole stack how we approach. It's from how we think about the products, the first experience of the customers, designing that, the whole process itself of designing, and all the way to the code that is later released, and customers get to use the functionality. Is we ensure that we streamline all of that. It's one of the critical things for us to be able, and one of the key things as we learned through our journey while going from one country and another, being able to replicate as much of the experience that we gained in our new products, new jurisdictions. And that comes on technical level. I'm not sure how technical the audience is, but like on high level, we build in-house. 99% of our technology is in-house built. It's covering pretty much everything, including HR system. That is also, at some point, we decided to build our own in-house because to be able to facilitate our processes, how we design them and evolve them accordingly, instead of being, people management is a critical piece for us as a growing company now with over 6,000 people globally, with challenges of working, in distributed environment as well, not just being in one country. So that's key, and so it's in-house. Second is open source. We don't buy software. We do work with SaaS vendors, for certain areas, but we prefer to build and deploy own code. Then for each of the layers kind of the development process, as I was saying, from designing the product to building it, to releasing it, to collecting data and analytics to be able to define what is going to be the next iteration of it, we approach it with standardization, single framework for all of those things, single platform, and organizationally we're structured to support that, so that across the company, different business units working on different products, they can have as much autonomy as possible, but at the same time, there's a lot of reuse of all those things, how to do things, right? So that we don't end up with discrepancy across our whole ecosystem of over 1,000 different applications. That's a key thing, right? Like for us to stay up to date, to be able to react to market customer needs. Just as an example, for us, notion of digital transformation, like it doesn't exist per se. How like in bigger old organizations where there is discrepancy of technology, those are big multi-year programs. Usually for us, it's coming from a need. Okay, we need to be stack has to be up to date. As an example, a simple example, if we need to maintain the latest, for example, one of the predominant technology we use is Java, and for us to leverage the latest version of it, we need to consistently upgrade all our stack, all our applications in Java in shortest term. So this is how we approach. We don't leave it to individual teams to do that. We do it with very small efforts. In our case, it's a team of 2 people that is preparing everything, and upgrade happens within a matter of 2-3 months. While all the teams working on their products, etc. There is no big disruption, etc. So this is our typical approach on all kind of parts of our architecture.
Did you say 6,000 people globally?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. Just 6,000 to
a lot of it, of course, is operational roles within financial crime, customer service.
Yeah.
So the people who are involved in product specifically, it's probably under 2,000 people.
Yeah. I must say, Vlad, looks like you discovered something that Elon Musk discovered at X much later, which is you can do 3x more with 1/3 the people that a normal organization would require, or maybe even lesser. So I think fantastic. Getting 6,000 people to build a franchise of this quality is great. You made some really important points, which I think should resonate a lot with builders in India, which is around keeping things simple, because otherwise creating scale is very hard. Then taking charge of the key assets, your in-house, your open source, and you have really customized it to suit your processes, and you have set processes up to allow for a certain agility and simplicity. Can I ask you, how do you attract, engage, develop the best technology talent in order to be able to do this? Because on the one hand, some of the best tech and engineering folks would want a free hand to be able to do a new innovation every day and try and run in different directions and hack a new problem. On the other hand, when you're building something which is standardized, which scales, reliable, highly regulated financial asset, it requires a certain discipline and process. So how do you really solve the talent problem in all of this?
This is a challenge, I think, for most of companies. It's a key thing to look at all the time. For us, it's important that yes, we have the best talent. We have an advantage in a way with our working location policies, where we are completely flexible As long as we can hire in the country, the person can be anywhere pretty much.
Yeah.
So which kind of for us it opens, the surface is much larger in that case. Especially when COVID started, we leveraged that a lot.
Right.
Where during that time company grew significantly. Well, people never met each other in person until maybe some later when travel already was possible. Another aspect we realize that we're looking for traits fundamentally. We're looking for fundamentals in terms of knowledge, whatever the person is specializing in, and ability to learn. Ability to learn, having initiative, the work ethics. That are the key things I would say. So what we would call culture fit. It's a critical stage in our interview process as well. That part itself, how we interview, it's not also left like individually to each team to do it. We have a system across the company, which is then specialized for different roles, etc. There are owners for these processes, from interviewing, onboarding, and so on. So I can't say we're perfect in that area. There's continuous work, but I would say it's something that has to be looked at all the time. Talent management is key.
Yeah, but I think you said something really key to the issue of being able to attract and groom and retain great talent, which is to hire for a certain fit. And it's great. I mean, obviously all the things that you said, which is about you should be good at technology if you're being hired for technology and so on, but also work ethic, and do you really fit into the overall ethos? I think that actually is a key point, and potentially something very useful for builders in India and founders in India who are building companies. If I stay on the theme of the product a little bit, you spoke about customer experience and then going down all the way through the stack to getting the right processes and then the right technology and then the data and then going through an iterative route to keep getting it better. As you were building these, are there some moments that you felt, aha, I mean, this really is something I didn't expect, or this is really something that is very important and is critical to build a great product or a great digital asset? Or were there moments where you felt, this is really hard, I made a mistake, this is the wrong way to go, and you should avoid going down this path?
Hindsight is always the better side, but I think one of this strength maybe in our company ethos is the adaptability, right? Like the things I mentioned before that help us to adapt to situation, especially if we consider the things that happen in the market in the last year alone. Globally, from banks collapsing, crypto firms, all of these things, they happen. The war in Ukraine, all of those things had big impacts on us as well. So for us to go through those challenges, it's important to be able to adjust quickly. Like risk management is again another key thing. Like for anyone who is in financial industry, and people would understand that. Maybe part of the one of the lessons maybe is within the regulatory environment, especially certain way how financial institutions should operate. It's already designed by sort of regulators, right? For us, what is important to realize at some point, I wish we realized that later and figured out maybe it was more even figuring out how to do it, how we can integrate all the three lines in such a way, or most importantly, the two lines, the first line of defense, the second line of defense, in such a way so that they can operate and not be against each other. it often happens in some organizations, and but to work together because the goal is common, to create the best product, the compliant product, the secure product, solve problem for customers. Right? The motivation is the same as the challenge is how to make this work together. We integrate the risk management part into product management.
Wow. Okay.
So that's key thing. It's not like enough to thought. It was challenging. Like in the beginning, it wasn't working very smoothly.
Correct.
But it's kind of going through iterations because it's learning from both sides, especially people who come from backgrounds where they're sort of used to just be the second line on kind of being a barrier.
Yeah.
Business being kind of treating it as a
it's a hurdle. Yeah.
So that breaking that, making each side learn the other side. There's in our case, from business side, there's constant feedback into how the risk processes, how risk framework works. Accordingly, back into product from risk, there's a lot of feedback, training that is happening so that product can actually understand better how to manage on risks and so on.
That's really fascinating, and I think it's a sign of the maturity that overall in the fintech and the new ecosystem that's happening. This conversation about risk management is so central. We talk quite often about this notion of compliance by design and not an afterthought. Once you have built something, then you wake up and think, hey, is this compliant? Versus as you're building it, really asking yourself, is this compliant? And a fascinating and a more recent anecdote, I was there in the other room with the Matrix Partners track, and one of the other very senior founders in the Indian ecosystem said, I do something really simple. I imagine that the regulator has downloaded my app and has started using it. So just as you would imagine a customer downloading your product and using it, you also imagine a regulator using it, and just that mind frame gets you really alert about what would be the first reaction, what would be the second reaction, and then you start thinking a bit differently. So I think it's a great lesson for everyone and a sign of great maturity. So let me shift gears a little bit from the product towards building a multinational company. And I must say there are so many aspiring players, new age players who want to cross borders. And there is often an intuition that technology can kind of scale borders very easily, data science can scale borders very easily, even if the regulatory environment and regime is different. But it's easier said than done. And I think you in Revolut have really done that more successfully than many others. So what has been the magic sauce? How have you really thought about internationalization while maintaining the right local balance, and how did you make this happen?
Okay, it starts with the problem, understanding the problem really well. What is the actual requirement? Why it exists? Putting that into context. Second step is for us, and this is how I push to think, product, engineering, operations, everyone who's involved in defining, deciding, anything, is to think with framework in mind. Because almost always, like most of problems, they are not a single instance, not one-off. How we can do it in such ways, so we introduce
the frameworking, yes,
a framework for it, so we can actually then do it again easily, right? So we don't just solve it, once off, and what I mentioned maybe earlier, like the framework platform approach, which at the same time gives autonomy to different teams where it's needed, where teams within a specific market, they own the market. The important part for them is to be able to reach the customer, to create the message, to understand the needs, what specifically needs to be localized, deliver that to teams that build it. And the way we approach as well, again, we had a lot of learnings over the years, because we started expanding outside of Europe first time in, our first approach was 2018. Not initial things were sort of very startup-y, let's just do it and see what happens. There was a lot of learning from that, and kind of we realized, okay, we have to have more structured approach. One of the things we do, like the challenge we had, for example, with local teams getting requirements when we have centrally built platform, having the kind of the central human capital that is then demanded across the world was a challenge.
Right.
How we solve it? Currently, we create local hubs, but we don't do it. When approach again, my as well approach to scaling is not to build straight away for the absolute scale, but to do it gradually.
Right.
Like in this case, we don't create a team per country. We have regional hubs where they work with within because one of the main challenges is collaboration, and it's not even location that is critical, but the time. So people in close time zones, they can work together.
Yes.
This is one key thing that was important for us to solve, and they know, like what we define them local hubs, regional development hubs. We have one in Latin America, another one is in Asia Pacific, focusing on these markets.
Wow. Okay. Now, this is remarkable. I have not. Honestly, I think this is very unique, because what you are doing is you're creating local hubs in certain time zones, and that hub has the technology and talent density to be able to solve the problems in that area. I think the second thing you said is that don't go and build it for the ultimate scale right away. Build it incrementally, because there is a lot of learning that you learn and that comes along the way. And you spoke about this thing I want to get a bit deeper into. You spoke about don't solve it idiosyncratically for just one odd market. Think of a problem as a framework and then kind of create a structure. Can you give me a little more color on that, or some example, some way of thinking about it? Because I'm sure there are a lot of founders who are trying to go international, and they're going to go through this experience of frameworking the problem and making it more generic. So how do you really do this? What does it mean?
This probably aligned with the previous question, things that I wish I did earlier.
Yeah.
So if that thinking about communicating to everyone the importance of streamlining and simplifying, it's like, I'll give you an example. We use a lot of machine learning. Data scientist is one of the key roles that we hire for, and this space in itself is still not mature.
Yeah.
It's fairly new. It derives from computer science more generally, but there's certain specialization, and the industry itself is not mature yet. The practices, the tooling, everything is, the people who come to the company, they learn how to use that. They come up with own ways to do it. So in the beginning, it creates, people come with very different ideas how to do this. There's nowhere, one best way or standard defined for that. And we had a problem that managing those models, and it's because it's a complex process, it's a more complex process than writing software.
Right.
That in itself created a lot of complexity, right? Then we decided, okay, this becomes too complex. The knowledge gets lost sometimes. We decided to create our own machine learning platform to manage the whole process and to simplify the work for data scientists. And this is kind of a problem in the industry that is very, very well known, that data scientists, 90% of their time, they're doing software engineering. That's a big problem. Like, we realized it as well, and like the way we approach to build this ecosystem where engineers focus on building the platform for data scientists to work on their models.
Right.
Focus where they 80% of their time they just work on the models instead of figuring out how to deploy it, how to run it,
Right.
how to train it, how to connect it to data. All those things is a platform problem.
And this kind of thinking is your day job, right? This is really what you. Or
Yeah,
how
I mean,
who
it's not
does
just
this?
me. Of course, it's all the team. But what I put kind of in place is fundamentally where we have these kind of problems, we have platform teams.
Right. Oh, I see.
This is specifically platform teams that are not focused on end product, but facilitating all the products. And these platform teams, they're central technology platform teams for all the stack, for backend, machine learning, data platform, design system is a big part of it. Because for us it's critical every time we make changes so that experience in the application across iOS, Android, web is exactly the same.
Right.
When we make a change, when we decided to rebrand, we don't want to spend a lot of time going through all the different assets, each team independently, and then fixing lots of inconsistencies. We create a design system with a big part of our whole approach is automation as much as possible.
Right. Right.
So information that we feed at the top of the funnel, most of it should sync automatically
Right.
down the stream through what designers put. They made the decisions on how the UI should look like. That automatically goes into code. Framework developers, they don't have to think about that anymore.
Right.
Did they pick the right color and so on? So those discrepancies, in the past was a big problem. We solved it with, again, framework, which is design system, automation around that. That was how we approached. Because India, as a market, is very unique. In the previous session, there was a mention of data localization requirements. That was another challenge for us to solve. But fundamentally, again, we leveraged a lot of those things that we defined as frameworks, right, through automation. Maybe another example I would give is it's one of the problems for many financial institutions of certain size is managing your whole ecosystem, doing audits on it.
Yep.
Quite often these are heavy processes.
Yep.
For us it was critical to build a governance system on top, which is not just a set of policies. Those are policies, frameworks that are coded into system from which most of things are automated. Controls that have to be put in place, because one of the key issues to be operationally efficient, to be able to manage your risk, to know that you have your controls, you need to have completeness, you need to have 100%. There is no such thing. 90% will be fine.
It's fantastic. I think this is really getting to the, at least for me, getting to the magic sauce of it, which is a lot of these structural problems have to be solved in the substrate layer. It's not the customer facing, it's really the underlying. Just fantastic. I think just in the last few minutes, I want to tap into your role and your vantage point as someone who goes around the world quite a bit. What are some of the big trends you are seeing? Now, I know I picked this up in a conversation that you don't really look at yourself, quote unquote, as a neobank, but you're really essentially a digital first bank. In some markets, Europe, you're actually a fully regulated entity, so you are licensed, you are mainstream front and center. Then there's this whole notion about super app versus not. So what are some of the big trends you are seeing play out that we should all be watching out for?
I think the trend of digitalization is kind of outdated.
Yeah.
Right? We see, the pandemic accelerated that massively. Part of it, of course, it's more of a necessity for the whole industry. Fintechs pushed the legacy banks to move more into online digital. In Europe specifically, in 2019, 2020, those were in the news for some of the common taglines, headlines about banks closing branches here and there across countries. So we kind of, that is already happening or happened. The other thing, one specific thing maybe I'm excited specifically about is open banking.
Yeah.
That you know, it was a regulatory initiative in Europe. It's spreading across the world. Many regulators realized there's big benefit in it. This challenge in making it work technically, because there's within one country maybe it's a much smaller issue. Within an environment like European Union, with every country left to own device how to define the standards, how exactly to do it, which created its own industry of aggregators. But generally, it's like the direction itself, from my perspective, is great because it's we see it gives customers better choice, transparency on things like service availability, switching providers. You don't like the decision. Like before, switching schemes, for example, in the UK existed, and that required a very hard decision. It's all or nothing. You either change your bank fully or not at all, and it's of course less than 1% of population would make such decision in their life.
Absolutely.
And open banking simplify that you as a consumer can benefit. You don't have to make this hard decision to be just with one provider. You can connect your accounts easier. You can, in some standards, they define even things like transparency on pricing, right, which is fed through the open banking API and so on.
Yeah. No, makes a lot of sense, Vlad. I think you are obviously a great proponent of open banking and the benefits of that for the consumer. In India and in a bunch of other Asian economies, that's an area of focus where regulations are evolving. So I think point well made and well taken. We'd love to go on, but the organizers are keeping us honest on time. I think if it's okay, I'll skip the Q&A, but Vlad and Paroma are around. If there are more questions, please do catch them. Thank you so much and enjoy your lunch after this. Vlad, thank you so much for coming down to India. This is your first visit, but hopefully, first visit, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so hopefully you come back quite often and we'd love to host you again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just on a final note, a big congratulations to the whole Indian nation for the incredible launch on the moon. That was amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.